Hey, everybody, welcome back to another terrible podcast. My name is Brandon. I'm co-host of the show here along with Ashley, and today's quote is from the Holy Bible, from the book of Matthew, chapter 7, verses 22 to 23. Many will say to me on that day, Lord, Lord, we prophesied in your name, drove out demons in your name, and performed many miracles in your name, didn't we? Then I will tell them plainly, I never knew you. Get away from me, you who practice evil. Ashley?
Yeah. Hi. So happy that we're recording today. So I'm like reading this. Thank you for sending it to me. And I feel like anyone who's reading this just on the surface level would think that would be confused because you're saying well, I did all these things right in the name of God. So then why are you saying who practice evil? But I also think there's an ownership of see, I can do these miraculous deeds too. And it's not necessarily, that's not what I guess the teachings of Jesus, if you want to go there, are. Oh my God, I don't know if you can hear that right now outside my house.
Someone's beeping. Just in time. Yeah. We just started the show. Tell them thanks.
Yeah, it's been silent here for hours, but no.
Thanks for the humor.
Exactly. But I do appreciate, because I feel like it makes you look deeper into the quote, into what they're actually trying to say. And I think sometimes there's this way of doing things where you have this perspective of, well, I'm doing it for the right reasons. But when somebody says that, a lot of times I feel like they aren't necessarily the right reasons, or you're making excuses for your actions and you know that it wasn't the right thing to do.
Yeah. That happens a lot. I think the most dangerous is kind of like the one where they say the road to hell is paved with good intentions.
I just said that last week to somebody.
Was it a guy who was paving a road? Was he like, that would have been hilarious. He would have been like, is this the road to hell? He would have been like, well, it is going to Atlanta, so I don't know. Just kidding, Atlanta. I don't know why I said that, but I was just trying to be funny. I'm a comedian. Anyway, so yeah, I think the interpretation of this quote for me means it is like that. And if you said, because, we did all these things in your name, do we do it right? It's like, no, I just told you to live like me, follow me, the path of me, don't try to start a church in my name and stuff. It's just follow me, I guess, is kind of what I get.
Yeah. And I also think I'm sorry to interrupt and interject here, but when you're saying follow me, but live how I live, I think a lot of people misconstrue that of, well, he gave all of these sermons and speeches, so that's what I should be doing. And he performed these miracles, so I should be doing that. And it's well, no, that you're missing the point here. It's one of those, I feel like those people don't really quote unquote get it.
Yeah, and again, I feel like that's okay. It's just a different level of understanding. People interpret the Bible in all different ways, and I feel that your interpretation of the Bible says a lot about where you are as a person and what you're understanding. So that's why I always tell people they should work on themselves, especially when you're using the Bible. Use it. What does it mean to you in your own life? When you start to try to apply it to other people, that's kind of when you are prophesizing in Jesus's name, as they were saying. And I think that's how I take it. It's like, oh, you have to do this because this is what Jesus said, and you have to worship Jesus. And it's like, well, Jesus was more talking about his, he's living his life as an example for you to live your life. So that's the number one priority, I feel. And that's what he was like, no, just live like me. And then you don't really have to prophesize to people, because he mostly spoke in parables anyway when he was talking to people, because he understood that sometimes people just aren't ready for knowledge, because knowledge could be a tool, just like a hammer. You don't want to hand a hammer to a 3-year-old, you know what I mean? But you can use that same hammer to build a bed for that 3-year-old. I just said that in my book, which you could go, if you go to shadowwork.com, by the time you hear this, you could read my book. So go to shadowwork.com. Anyway, so yeah, definitely. But let's get into this card. Anyway, unless you have any other thoughts.
Well, I do have a couple thoughts, not necessarily about the quote, but what I want to say is that at this point, when this episode comes out, we will have 2 guest episodes
Oh
already
yeah.
out. And so that's so exciting. We've reached out to our communities of people that we know and bring on people that I think I've been kind of blown away. I love that we're now doing recordings, like actual video recordings, because you get to see my face, how I always look so confused, but also so shocked as to what is, what you can get from people. I love meeting these people and asking questions. So those are new episodes that come out on Thursday. So you should definitely give those a listen, and you should follow them and reach out to them if you have any questions. I'm obsessed with anyone that can offer any kind of insight. I would get a reading every day from a new fucking person if I could afford it, and if I had the outreach to be able to know all these different people, because I just think it's so interesting. So definitely listen to those new podcasts that come out on Thursday, our guest episodes. And so we're going to keep reaching out to other people. Hopefully we'll keep going with these guests. I have a couple people already lined up that we're going to be talking to. So really, really exciting stuff for us. That's all I wanted to say.
Yeah, for sure. And you're kind of manifesting that, because you just said you wish you had a new reading every day. Well, you basically have a new reading every week now, because with these guests coming. So.
And something else I can bring up is I'm actually now the co-host of a new podcast. So you should also give that a listen. It's more business focused and women focused. So unfortunately, I don't have the amazing Brandon as my co-host, but I do have an awesome woman named Jen as my co-host. So I'll just talk about that a little bit as we kind of get into the scheduling of all of that. All right, let's go now into
and let me just say really quickly too, and if you'd like to dive into my work further, because I don't talk about it too much, but I also, other than the book, at shadowworked.com, you can also find my work at morelaws.moreproblems.com. It's a blog I've had since 2013. I've wrote on there, and now I do videos, memes, all kinds of stuff, and I just started doing videos again with people, so you could get there to my YouTube through that, so check it out. Okay.
Brandon, you are just like always out and about. I feel like always doing like a million things. Brandon always has like so many other things. Like, well, I'm recording with this person. I'm recording with that person. I'm going to this and I'm doing that. It makes me feel like I just have nothing going on.
Well, it's either that or I'm sitting at home, so don't feel bad.
Hey, that's my life. Okay.
Yeah, so that's a lot of my life too. So it's similar. Don't worry, you'll get there. You're there. We're recording, so you're killing it.
So today we're going to be talking about the 8 of Wands. I'm going to say, we have just a handful of Wands cards left. What are your thoughts so far? Have you had a favorite suit we've talked about?
Well, I think I identified with the Wands as my favorite suit before, and
why?
Because it's fire, it's magical, it's creation, and that's kind of what I was just getting into at the time. I just started learning to make bunnies appear out of hats. No, but what magic really is all about, when we talk about this, like alchemy and just creating in your life and making things like this book, for example, that's it's like a magical creation that I was able to pull from the ether with my conscious as the guide using it. But, I feel like it came from somewhere else kind of. So in that same way, that's why I really appreciate the Wands. But honestly, I began to get an overall appreciation for all the suits as we went through them. And I'm glad that we saved the Wands for last, because now I kind of have a different perspective than when we started. So, yeah. What about you?
I feel so basic by even saying this, but my favorite has been the cups. Yes, and I still love them.
That's good.
I just love the
basic.
Yeah, I know. I don't even know what I love exactly. I love the idea of it being like a chalice. I love the idea of it containing something. I love the idea, is the glass half full, half empty kind of thing, and then you have the material the cup is made out. It just really speaks to me. And honestly, it would be probably a close tie between that and, what do you think is the other suit I'm going to say?
Wands or swords?
It's going to be swords.
Swords, yeah.
And I think it's because that turns so many people off.
Oh,
But
me too. That's my second one. That's why I was thinking
yeah,
that. Yeah.
and so we've been pulling cards of the day and posting them on Instagram. And I sent Brandon a text this morning, like for the past 3 or 4 weeks, every week, right in the middle of the week, I have pulled the Ace of Swords every week. And so I feel it's kind of trying to tell me something about where I am in my journey. And I also feel like people are so turned off by swords because there's that scary aspect of it's a sword and it could be dangerous. And but they don't understand that, kind of that the struggle is real situation. Like everyone is struggling with something. And I love that it kind of casts my struggles into the forefront and saying like, look, you understand that that's what you're trying to do and what you're trying to work through or work for. And so because you can already identify that, you can move forward.
Yeah, that's recognizing it. It's like denial, it's like coming out of that denial, recognizing that you actually have something to work on. And swords also to me are about ideas because they represent the air. So
Mm-hmm.
I'm a very logical person. As I was having a very friendly debate yesterday with a friend who had some questions about my cosmology, I'll just say. And I like to tell people, like, I don't like to debate about like I mean, I love to debate, right? But I don't want to get into debates about like I'm trying to stay away from debates about like theology and my cosmology and stuff. Like I like to talk about it and stuff, but more in the realm of like the hypothetical. I just don't like to talk about hypotheticals. And if I'm talking about
Can you give me an example of a
yeah, so
hypothetical?
if somebody's like, what do you think happens after you die? I'm like,
Oh,
well,
okay.
we could talk about that all day and that's a great thing and it's fun. But to me, like for example, Christianity, I'll identify as a Christian. I'll tell people I'm a Christian, and it's because I follow the path of Christ. That's the most important thing to me, which is the golden rule and living kind of like he did.
Mm-hmm.
And so I'm finding that on that path also that it's just becomes easier for me to not talk about hypotheticals because you can't prove it and it falls more in the realm of belief. So I would have to like form a belief about something and get behind it, where I like to try on ideas and think about it and think it's possible, and I'll
Mm-hmm.
have conversations like that. But I think when you start talking about dogma, that's when you get in the area of people start to have conflict. And I'd rather talk about what we have in common, especially when it comes to Christianity, because there's so many beautiful things against so many, like across so many different quote unquote belief structures or religions that they have in common let's talk about that. Let's not talk about what the difference is. Let's talk about what they said that was the same.
Well, and I also think there's this idea of when you talk about those kind of hypotheticals, people are very surprisingly, because it is a hypothetical, close-minded. And it's like well, I think this. Great, but you don't know, just like I don't know. It could be both, it could be neither.
But yeah, and what I found a lot of that comes from, because I experienced that in my own life when I was more married to ideas that involved dogma thinking and stuff like that. And it was because I thought that I needed to control the situation,
Mm-hmm.
because I'll rather just leave it as a mystery. Like, I don't know. That's what my faith is. My faith is I don't know, but I'll just live this life because based on everything I've been through in my life, this seems like the best path. So that's
Mm-hmm.
the way I'm going to live it. So this way, I think I got lost in the weeds of what I was talking about. But anyway, so yeah, I don't know. Take it away, Ashley. What were you talking about again?
Yes.
I was talking about my theological debate and yeah, talking about what's the
And
same,
how
that
it
stuff.
deals with swords and having
Yeah,
that.
swords. That's right. So that's exactly what it is. So swords, and to bring it back to the circle of swords, and I'm glad you said that. Then we could talk about this card, which is they could be dangerous. So if you're comparing your sword with somebody, or you're having like a kind of like a battle, you could hurt somebody. So you got to be very careful with your words, because words are like a spell.
Mm-hmm.
They connect to ideas in your head in a different way that they might connect to ideas in other people's heads. And in other people's heads, with your words, you might be painting different pictures than the one you have in your head. So I'll have a picture in my head of what I want to explain to somebody. And as I give it words, it'll destroy that picture, and it degrades it, and it'll paint a different picture than somebody else's head. That's why art's so much better. So that's why,
And just to go back to what I was saying before about asking about your favorite suit that we've talked about, do you know my least favorite suit going into this was going to be wands? I felt so confused, and
yeah.
I just it's conflicting for me because cups deals with emotions, which I feel very in tune to, and the sword for me deals with a little bit more of emotionality and like a struggle or an obstacle or just kind of dealing with, for me, with feelings. And I never could associate anything that related to me to the suit of wands. I don't know why. I just couldn't.
What about now? You just started a business.
That's true. That's true. But you know what? Even when I pull up my cards, like I pull my card of the day, or I'll do like a weekly spread, I rarely get wands in the readings, like in my pulls.
Yeah, it could just be that for some reason you don't relate to that now in your life. That's all. It doesn't mean, it's a bad thing.
This past week, which you'll see, like I've pulled my cards, very sword heavy. Yeah, very sword heavy. All right, so I digress. Let's get back to what we normally do here. So for this part of the podcast, we're looking at one card. We look at it, give our initial thoughts, and talk about the different aspects of it, and then we talk about how it applies to various types of readings. So today we're looking at the Eight of Wands. So I normally give a description, but you can always check out the actual card on our Instagram or our Facebook. For Facebook, we're the Terrible Podcast, and on Instagram, we're at Terrible2, TAROTBULL, and the number 2. Okay, so Eight of Wands in the Rider-Waite deck. You got this light blue background. You have these 8 wands kind of protruding diagonally from the left side of the card, protruding diagonally down. So it looks like you've got a grouping of 4, and then a grouping of 2, and then another grouping of 2. And then in the background, you see kind of this little mountaintop, or you see a tree, maybe a little house. Not, in terms of some of the cards we've looked at, not a lot in terms of what to describe here.
Yeah.
I don't want to say it looks basic because I feel like we can get into that a little bit more, but it's not as complex with as many characters and different images or symbols as some of the other ones. Okay, so Brandon, initial thoughts. What do you think?
This looks like the wands are trying to obscure the clear day. So it's very confusing. This is a card that's always been kind of confusing for me. But as my understanding of the tarot and these esoteric ideas grow, I'm starting to understand it more. But like looking at it upon first sight, it really is confusing. It's kind of like, what's going on? Are these woods that are in my way of my destination? Like, why are they at that angle? I don't get it. So yeah, very confusing.
Right. And so I'm also thrown off by, like, there's no people in it.
Yeah.
And the direction that the wands are coming from seems very unnatural.
Yeah.
And you don't see where they're coming from. You just see them coming from the left side of the card, coming like diagonally down. So initially, my initial thoughts are, where are the people? Are there people? Why are there no people? And then kind of I'm trying to give myself a chance to do initial thoughts and reactions. And it felt kind of like like speedy, almost like an attack or something unexpected. It's hard for me to put into words sometimes what exactly, like, I'm in my head, I'm like, okay, what am I trying to say? But like, you're looking at it, and again, because you don't see the people, it just seems like one second you're looking up and it's a clear blue sky, and the next second there's all of these wands there, and it's like, whoa, where the fuck they come from? What's going on? So let's get into the different aspects here. We, again, don't have that much to talk about. I actually want to start off talking about the wands. If you've listened to our show before, you know I always normally start with the background, but I feel like that would, for me, it doesn't seem like the right trajectory in order to talk about this card. I think we should talk about the wands first and then talk about the background and the sky and the actual background.
Yeah, I agree. I think that because the wands are right in your face. Mm-hmm. So what this has come to mean to me is that the reason the wands are right there and they're just in your face and you can't see where they're coming from or what the cause of them is, basically. It's kind of like the whole saying, you know, you can't see the forest through the trees. If I said that right, but you have it. Whatever these wands represent, say it is the magic that we talked about, the creation. Mm-hmm. You're just so close to it that you can't see, for good or bad, you know, this could be a good thing or a bad thing. You can't see exactly where it's coming from.
Yep.
So, and it's also obscuring your view a little bit, but it's not terribly obscuring your view. It's like a screen door. You could still see through it. It's just that I think they're trying to convey, maybe, or somebody was trying to convey that sometimes these powers, we don't know where they come from. Maybe it's another dimension, or again, you know, because it's off camera, I'll say, you can't see it. Or sometimes when you're so close to it, you can't see the bigger picture. Maybe it's, you know, because it could be a warning also in that regard.
Yes, I love that. And I'm to just go now, for me, looking at it, it seems like this is just overtaking your attention. So you're right, you can't see beyond it. And I think sometimes you get so immersed in a situation. This is going to kind of, spoiler alert, apply to how I see this card in different readings, different types of readings. But it's almost like you can't see out. You can see a little bit, but it's just so overtaking the main focus of what it is you're looking at. Because, and especially the way that they're spread out, it's like you feel like you get a little bit of a sliver here, like a little bit more space, and then no, it's two, and then you get a little bit more, and it's like, nope, they're still there. And your eye is just focused solely on that.
Yeah.
And I feel like sometimes those situations, you don't realize you're so engrossed in it until you're really engrossed in it. And then you're like, whoa. Or honestly, sometimes you don't even realize you're engrossed in it until you take a step out of it and you're like, holy shit. Yeah, I mean, I can use like a silly example of, you know, I can even use the example of the boyfriend that I had in college. You know, I was so engrossed in that relationship that I cut everything else out. It was such a fixation on this one person. I see how incredibly unhealthy that is now. And getting out of that, I was like, whoa, I never saw that it was like having blinders on. That being said, there's nothing wrong with sometimes having blinders on and being like so fixated and focused on a goal. So again, I'm just going to talk a little bit about that in our different types of readings. But looking at this, that was what I would say about these 8 wands. And what I also love is that they're not all ending at the same point. You know, some of them go a little bit further than others. Some of them, I'm going to pull up the card. Some of them are going a little bit further than others. Some of them are going, you know, there's the clump of 4 and then there's the clump of 2, but they all seem to be coming from the same direction. Now, if they were coming from an opposite direction, I'd say that's like clashing viewpoints, but this is giving you that you're just getting lost in this moment. And even if you try to kind of break outside of it, you really can't.
Yeah. It's like all encompassing.
Yes. And I love a lot of times being in a situation like that. I think it can be very kind of romantic, even if it's not necessarily a person or a romantic situation. I love the focus I get when I'm in that kind of situation. Because I think especially, and look, no criticism to anybody because I'm the same fucking way, but I think there's so many things that take our attention now there's this, you know, it's like we all have ADD of you can't focus on something. Exactly. You got your phone. I've got Gizzy. I've got my nails that I'm always picking at. And I'm not going to lie, over here, there's like a windowsill I was peeling paint off of last night that I'm really excited to get back to later. But like, it's like, you just almost feel like you can't, you're like, I'm going to multitask, and then you really get nothing done. I just love the beauty of being like, I'm going to sit down and focus on this. And then it's like, boom, you get it done. And you just feel so productive.
That's the power of being able to harness your attention. And if you can start to view your attention as gold, you know, wherever you put your attention. That's why if you've ever spent time around a lot of children and animals, like dogs and stuff, like in a situation where people have their kids and their dogs, you'll notice that the kids and their dogs are like going crazy for attention, but the adults all have their attention pacifiers, which is their phones. So I've learned that if I can harness my attention and turn it away from my phone, it's a good tool. Like I said before, just like a hammer, all these things could be tools to use, but when you overuse them and you're using them for escapism, and I do too, I look at my phone, I'm like, why am I still staring at my phone? I got to put this thing down.
Yep.
You know, it's making me crazy, man. And so, yeah, for sure.
And so we talked a little bit in a past episode about love languages. And one of the love languages is quality time. So that when you're in that situation with somebody, you're actually connecting, and it's not time, right? That's not what I just said. I said quality time. Again, there's that fixation of like, I'm going to be present and in the moment. And then you can go and use your pacifiers and your other bullshit once you leave.
Yeah. I use it like kind of when I'm around friends and stuff. I try to keep my phone home or whatever for out to eat and stuff like that. You know, or I try to keep it in the car.
I mean, like if I had friends, I feel like I'd do the same thing.
Yeah, I don't mean now. I meant a few years ago. I don't. Yeah. I did nowadays. I try to put my phone down when my cats need attention. I'm like, all right, I'll give you attention.
If I did that when Gizzy needed attention, I would never do anything, because she's always like, as soon as I'm like, okay, I'm gonna go and do this, she like stretches and she's like, now's the time. I want you to pay attention to me. It's like,
why she's so special.
She is. She really is. Okay, so the next thing I want to talk about in the card is, again, surprisingly, not the backdrop or the blue sky. I want to talk about the actual landscape. So you got this greenish landscape, this little mountain and a river. What did you think?
Well, a lot of times I talk about how castles in the background are kind of like means that you're away from the safety and the security and all that stuff. And that's really because that looks, if you zoom in on it, looks like it could be a castle.
Yep.
Surrounded by maybe a town or like a forest or a nice little safe place. It's up on a hill. It's easily defended. So you're away from that from this point of view. You're far away from that. So this is more like advancement. Like you're out away from everyone else, the safety, you know, you're out in the, like the hermit kind of. Out in the wild. So, and also that river represents the path that you had to traverse to get where you were. So you did go through that water, and you're now a different person because of it.
Okay. So for me, just before I even get into that, unrelated, I love that you've pulled up the card. So if you can look on our YouTube to see us talking about it. But what I love about you, Brandon, is we have so similar ways of doing things. You have like 8,000 tabs open on your computer. Yeah. It's like, that's me. And it's like tabs I haven't looked at for weeks, but I'm like, no, I can't get rid, because then I'm going to forget about it, you know? Okay, I'm sorry. I digress. So
yeah, and I'll pull one off to the side when I have to do a side project, like post a podcast or whatever, and then I'll X them off, and then I'll go crazy one day and I'm like, I don't need it. But right now, yeah, it's everything. I still need most of them. So yeah, it's my being inside my brain's crazy, but yeah, anyway.
So, all right, for me, looking at the landscaping, there's this fertility that's there with, to me, I would, because it's a lush landscape. It's green, it's alive, it's nourished, it's growing. So I feel as though there's an abundance, again, that fixation, that focus on maybe a specific topic. Maybe that's what you need to do in order to get that type of landscape. and there's a river running through it. So I feel like, now, spoiler alert, going into also talking about the actual sky, the river is kind of that emotion, which I feel like a lot of times you need to have that passion associated with being focused on something. If it is a relationship and having that, those blinders on and just being so involved in that relationship, or if it's a work project, writing a book, starting a new business, you have to have that kind of passion and emotion behind it. Because if you're like, yeah, I'm doing this thing, I really don't give a shit about it. Do you think you're going to get it done? No. I've had on my to-do list for weeks to like steam mop the floors, and I haven't done it. You know why? Because I don't care. I don't care about it, But if it's something I really want to do, I make sure like we have scheduled our podcast recordings. I want to do that. So I schedule the recordings and I send out our invites like a week in advance. You know what I mean? So I love that that's there because it helps make me feel like, if it's something you really want, you make time for what you want to make time for. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. And it's a professional experience. When we have a guest on now, they get an email a whole week ahead of time. It's really good stuff.
But it gives me that focus of, at the end of the day, if I die tomorrow, am I going to be like, whatever hypothetically happens after I die, am I going to be like, really wish I'd steam mop those floors? No, I'm not.
I mean, you might.
If I do, I'd be real sad. I'd be really sad if that was my first thought. I feel like my first thought would be like, where's Giz? But my second thought is like, God damn those floors. I wish I'd steam mop them.
And Giz is like, I'm God, duh, I'm right here.
Yeah. It's like, I've always been there.
Yeah, dog spelled backwards is God. I left a clue for you. Hello.
So let's now go to the background, like the actual sky backdrop. I love, again, I'm going to bring back to what I just said about the feelings associated with this. If it's something that's taking your attention, it's obviously something that emotionally you're connected to, whether you want to be or not. And I'm not even talking it has to be a positive thing. A lot of times I feel like people can get overcome by like grief, right? Or depression or anxiety. And then I can speak to my own situation with anxiety. I was so fixated on the paranoia that was in my head, I could not see beyond that. So several years ago, I could not get beyond the things I thought were going to happen. They never happened. They never came to pass, but they were in my head and I was so fixated. Physically, I was making myself sick about it. And I would cry all the time because I was so worried because my emotions were so attached to these ideas and thoughts in my head that had no merit. And so I think you can use this for good and bad, because I think sometimes you need to pull yourself out of that and say, which is really, really hard to do, because you might say like, I want to do this. I know this doesn't make sense, but in the moment, sometimes you can't say like, or I know I shouldn't be spending all my attention on this thing, but it's really hard sometimes to be able to pull yourself out of it and say like, okay, I'm just not going to do it.
Yeah. Well, I feel a lot of that in my life when I have a hard time doing something or trying to stop a behavior. It's because my body is continuing to do it still. And sometimes there's a way to deal with the body and you have to do what's called shadow work. And you have to remember that. And that's why I always tell people about like taking celebrations and pampering yourself once in a while and doing things. It's all about a balance. But if you don't, I feel you could run in circles if you're just aligning with one thing, if you're just worried about your thoughts all the time and your thinking mind and not your body. Because remember, you're one thing.
Yeah.
Your brain's in your head, which is part of your body. Remember that, everybody. I know it's hard. We always think we're like watching a movie or something like that. Could it be? But we aren't. Maybe we are. I don't know. But don't forget your body, everybody. It's why it's good to get out in nature and walk around. We talk about getting out. Like Ashley loves to get out in nature. I have a nice fake tree behind me, but I went for a walk yesterday in the woods. It's really good to get out there.
Yeah.
Anyway.
And it gives you a sense of realizing how insignificant some things are.
Yeah, for sure.
So one other thing I want to say about this card before we move on to talking about it in different types of reading is I often look up what other people have said about the card, just because I like to see kind of where our stances fit. And a lot of people said that this is like traveling or like flight or something like that. And this is what I have to say about that. Looking at this card, if someone said this is like flight or travel, I feel like I'd be scared. This looks like it's like going downhill, like a crash landing. That's what I feel. If I was going to say like this is like I would think like I would want it to go from the left side of the card diagonally up. That diagonal down makes me and again, maybe it's my preconceived notions, but it makes me feel like if someone said like that's the change that's happening, like that's you're traveling or your journey, I'd be like, ew, I don't want that to be my journey.
Well, think about it this way. If they are wands and they're magical, maybe they're just suspended in air and you can't, and the other side is where you're headed. So the bottom is where the journey begins, and you only know where your journey begins because you're basically at the beginning of your journey every day. You know, every step you take is the beginning of your journey. So we only know, maybe that's kind of what they're talking about. Like we only know where we can begin. And if you think about like the bottom one is actually touching the edge of the water and the land. And then the other ones are kind of based upon that one going upwards. So maybe it's just letting you know that, hey, listen, this is where you begin, but you have no idea where it could lead to. It's only pointing upwards. It's going toward the heavens.
And as you were saying that, I was thinking in my head, I've been so trained on how to read something. You start at the left and you go to the right, but we don't have to necessarily read things that way. Maybe you're starting at the right and moving to the left. That thought is so insane in my head because we have not been trained that way. Like I'm even thinking about a video game. If you're traveling in a video game, rarely are you starting on the right-hand side of the screen and moving to the left, right? You always start on the left, go to the right because, and then that's how things progress a lot of times. You can go backwards sometimes, right? But most of the time, the actual movement is going left to right.
Yeah, so that's a really good point. I never thought of that.
Right. So the idea like, well, maybe your journey is starting on the right-hand side. And maybe my journey is, Brandon, you know why? Because I think outside the box. I consider myself to be different. I don't need to subscribe to this left to right bullshit.
That's right. It is bullshit. It's more, could it be more indoctrination and slave training? I don't know. Maybe. It's just mental slavery, that's all. So it's easy to step out of everybody. That's the great part. Anyway.
Okay, so let's go into how this would apply to various types of readings. If this came up in a general reading, what would you say?
If this came up in a general reading, I would tell the person that maybe it's time to take a stance, like a step back and look at what's going on at the bigger picture and to see where you might be going. But also to have faith in where you're going. Because again, like I said, if you're going right to left, those wands are pointing upwards, going upwards, baby. So I would kind of give that message. What about you?
So I'd say that there's something in your life kind of taking your attention. And if we're going along with what people said about this journey and travel, maybe it is a trip. Or maybe you're really excited about someone coming to see you. I think especially now that things are kind of, if everyone keeps it, things are kind of opening up. So maybe people are feeling more comfortable to travel and visit. And then that could kind of take over your attention. Because especially if you haven't done that in over a year at this point, you might totally forget how to interact with another human being outside of the pod of people you've spent time with. You know, where it's like, oh my gosh, it's a big deal. I need to. Perfect example. My sister today is having an electrician, a plumber come to her house. They just got this pool. And they have been so #COVID conscious that they have not gone and seen like anybody. So her husband is like freaking out. He like lit a candle. It's a plumber and an electrician. But like, he's like very overwhelmed about people coming to the house.
Did he spill out some of his 40 for him too? I light a candle and spill out some of my 40. I don't know, man. That's hilarious.
So
All right. Yeah, that's great.
I would say, like, let's talk about what is taking your time and attention. And is that for the best? You know, you can take your time and attention. And that's really all I have to offer somebody is my time and my attention. I think that's the purest thing you can actually give someone. And so what is taking your time and attention? Is it worthy of your time and attention? And I can't judge that, you know. I know it takes my time and attention. And when I look at it, I'm like, I think those things are worthy of it.
Yeah, it's like a puzzle, kind of like a maze. You have to work your way out because in my own experience in the beginning, I felt like my time and attention was only worth watching TV and consuming mainstream garbage. But then as I worked on myself and raised my self-esteem, I was like, wait, why am I wasting my time on this crap? And then I just started to watch better stuff on TV. And then eventually I just don't watch TV as much and I will focus on other things, you know, reading audiobooks, videos, podcasts such as the Terrible Podcast, which is a great podcast. So yeah, I feel like and now that I've been focusing my time and attention in that way and on those things, it's yielded the fruits of, you know, this podcast, people listening to my lovely, beautiful golden voice, give them great tidbits of information. So yeah, it's great. And now let's take a break too. Why don't you read that review that we got? We got our first iTunes review because I'm silly and I thought our podcasts were going to iTunes. They were previously on our old one, but they weren't through terrible.com, but now they are, and Spotify. So go to terrible.com and you can listen anyway. All the links are there. Even on YouTube, you can watch our videos. Click on the little YouTube icon. So anyway.
All right. So I was going on to listen to our newest podcast. It took a while for me to get comfortable to even listen to myself. So it's not like one of those like I can't. It's not like I like wait for. I'm like, oh my god, every week I can't. It took a while where I was like, I don't even want to hear myself. But anyway, so I went on my Apple Podcast app and I saw that we had a review, and this was posted last Wednesday by Michelle. So shout out Michelle, thank you so much. I am looking at those things, and she gave us 5 stars. Hell yeah, like we're so famous. And it said so famous. There's a handful of people that listen. Okay, so it says, I just discovered this podcast and I'm finding it refreshing and fun. A little tarot and a little life talk. Isn't that what tarot's about? Life lessons put in front of you in a new way. It's always great to get insights into how people use tarot and interpret the cards. I like the 2 viewpoints in one podcast. Thank you so much for your kind words, Michelle. That's like very sweet that you even took the time to review that. I'd like to think that if someone's, again, spending their time and energy on something, you know, that's all you can offer me. And that's what I really value. So thank you so much.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you so much. And if you are listening and you want your review read, just leave us a review and we will read it on the podcast.
Yes.
Yeah.
All right. So we're going to jump now into this card going into a love reading. And I'm going to go first here because I have a lot to say. And I just don't want to forget it. So
by all means.
I always like talking about 2 different aspects. If you're in a relationship versus if you're single. So if you're in a relationship, to me, it still kind of looks like this honeymoon phase of you're still very enamored with the person. And see how I'm trying to make this a positive here, because I think also we talked about in the past few episodes that you can also fixate on the negative. So maybe it's one of those 2 things, right? You're going to either fixate on this love and adoration you have for this person. It's like you can't get enough of them, almost like it's like a drug of choice where you're obsessed with them and you want to keep getting that kind of like daily dose. Or you're at the point where you're like, oh my God, every fucking thing this person does bothers me. Like, why do you have to breathe like that? Why do you have to swallow like that? I've been there, you know. I don't do a loud swallow, but I can tell you right now.
I just want to break in really quick because that's hilarious, because I was swallowing coffee as you said that. You're like, I don't do a loud swallow, and I know what you meant, but I'm like, that's just the funniest thing to say to him. I hope nobody crashed their cars as they were listening to this podcast.
No, but I've like been on the phone with my sister.
I know what you meant. Yeah, I know. Yeah.
And you know, she's my twin sister, and I love her so much, and I feel so connected to her. But she'll be drinking something. She'll be like, And I'm like, what are you swallowing over there? It's like, it goes through the phone. It's just like, okay, I can't be around. That's going to drive me crazy. So that's what I'd say if you're in a relationship. If you're single, see, I'm bringing it back.
If you're in a relationship, don't swallow loudly.
We all know what I'm talking about. We all know that.
I think that's going to be the tagline of this podcast. We'll probably get more listens. We'll be like, Ashley talks about her stances on swallowing in a relationship. We'll get like 1 million downloads and everyone's like, oh, that's all right. It's too bad if you're listening and we troll you. You learned something. No.
Oh, and see, that's why I need to like really.
We keep it classy here. We hint. Yes. We hint at we let the listener fill in the blanks. All right, we're classy here at the Terrible Podcast. We're terrible, but we ain't disgusting. All right, no. Anyway, go ahead.
Oh my gosh! Sorry. All right, so if you're single, I also feel like stop. Okay. I'm gonna get.
We were changing the subject.
We are.
I know. One last one I had to. All right. I'm a comedian. I can't help it. And an author.
So, all right. So if you're single, I'd say this is fixating on kind of that. We've talked about this before. This obsession with finding someone or being in a relationship. Or a lot of times I feel like you become like obsessed with somebody, even if you're not necessarily with them. I can speak to like, I'm not going to lie, Brandon. When I first met you, I was like a little obsessed with you.
I get it. I couldn't help it. I got to go for the funny. No, but seriously, I was kind of like, I was a DJ at a like popular bar. So I was kind of like, I'm not like tooting my own horn, but I'm just saying in that view at the age, you just turned 21 and stuff. So it was like, wow, look at this guy. He's up there doing this in front of all these people. So yeah, I hear you.
And you would like always play the music I loved. And, so, I mean, I was like, I could see as somebody that's single, you get to this, you hang out with somebody, you meet somebody and you're like, whoa. And there's something very romantic about that, but it's very easy to overlook that everyone's not perfect. You know what I'm saying? Like, and eventually you're gonna get to the point where you're like, God damn it. The way that Brandon swallows is driving me crazy.
He swallows so loud. What is he doing over? I'm just gonna end the podcast now. I'm gonna be like, so I'm gonna finish the quote and I'm gonna be like, so what do you think, Ashley? Like, sorry, that was gross. But yeah, no, I get what you're saying. But let's say something nice about your sister because we're hammered on her, and if she listens, she's a viewer. We don't want to lose a viewer. But I like your sister because I think even that her and her boyfriend, I'm not sure, her and her man, they lit the candle. That's actually pretty cool because it's like they cleared the presence. They wanted to like cleanse the area. I'm not saying I exactly agree with their stances on everything, but that's just because I have a different point of view because I don't have children. So I was able to, take my time and attention and focus it on a lot of different things. And I'm not saying it's the right path for anybody but me. Trust me, it's crazy. So, anyway, but yeah, I think that people are just doing their best in these times. These are the times that really make or break people. So I think if you could just get through it because, I don't want to be downer, but there's a lot of people who haven't made it through, and it has nothing to do with a quote unquote virus or anything. It has more to do with despair and fear. So I would say, that if people are making it through and they're doing their best, like you got to give them at least that because a lot of people haven't made it through. So,
right.
You got to be brave. These are the times that really make people. So it's like, do it, dude.
So now, what do you think if this come up in a relationship reading or a love focused reading?
Ooh, I would say that, like you said, I kind of like how maybe it's time to focus out a little bit, or maybe you're just in that stage of relationship that, like you said, it's the beginning of it. So it is magical and you're not sure where it's going to lead to. But again, it's a balance. All these sticks are at different lengths. So that could just represent different characteristics of a person. So you could just see right now the facade of them. So, everyone doesn't really put out who they are at first, unless you're me. That's probably why I'm still single. But it's cool because I figured I'll just let people know right away all my demons. And if they're still like, hey, yes.
Yep.
So, but I've learned to communicate it in a different way so it's not so abrasive, but that's kind of what this is. If you meet somebody, you're going to see all those bumps, warts and all,
Mm-hmm.
and it's all about that and navigating that. So that's kind of what I would say. Just be open-minded. And also another thing I like to say is we always like to have pictures in our head, what we think it's going to be like to fall in love and, find somebody, but you have no idea. And I think it's just about being there at the right place and time when it happens and being able to know it's there, and not miss the opportunity.
Mm-hmm. Love
Which
that.
again, if you miss it, it's fine, because that's what in my view, that's what this life is about. It's about trying to figure it out and just bashing your head up against a wall until you finally get it, and then you're like, oh, let me find another wall to bash my head against, and then you bash your head against a wall for a couple of years, and you're like, oh, this is stupid, So
Okay, so now
get a
let's talk
helmet.
about
Anyway, go ahead.
if this comes up in a career focused reading, what would you say?
If this came up in a career focused reading, I would say similar to what I said, I think with the love thing, which I do that a lot, but if you're going to branch out on your own, which I talk about a lot, and you're going to do your own thing and sustain yourself and feed yourself and support your family, it's going to look different when you start it than it comes to at the end. Like, for example, the friend of mine who started the DJ company that I work for, when he first started the company, I could have had no idea that it was going to look like it does now, where he owns his own building,
Mm-hmm.
and he owns a giant building that he rents half of it to somebody else. And then he has one half, and he has vans and all this stuff. And when we started, he didn't have any of that. So, it's about being realistic in that and looking at everything in the real way, because magic and people who like me, the reason I gravitate toward wands is because I do spend a lot of time in my head and I create things mentally a lot. And I have all these ideas and these grand things, which are great, but a lot of times I don't follow through on them. So for me, it's more about being realistic about it. And
Mm-hmm.
where is it going to lead to, and trying maybe working with somebody else. And that's what I would give the advice. The final thing I'll say about this in the career, it's like, if you're going to branch out on your own, doesn't mean you have to do it all by yourself. Use the people around you. If people are
Yes.
willing to help you, use it now, because then you can help them later. Because this is the thing. If you have to call all your favors, like for my book, right? I did a GoFundMe and I was begging people for money basically. And I'm like, come on, support my book. And now I'm selling it. This is the thing. If they give me a little bit, everyone gave me like 25, $50, and then they buy my book, give me like 10, $20, whatever. It doesn't mean as much to them. It's like a small sacrifice. Like maybe they don't get a meal, or they have to, whatever it is, but I'm able to put that all together and then build something that is going to later benefit them and other people down the road more in a
Mm-hmm.
way. And it's a way for them to give to something that's real, instead of giving to, the fakeness that we see all around us in the world. Like we talked about escapism. Instead of like going to buy a carton of cigarettes, they could buy one of my books, or I don't know, that's a carton of cigarettes, probably like $100 or whatever now. But you know what I'm saying? Like, instead of buying one pack of cigarettes, they could buy my book, and then they could build something. So.
And so I love what you said about leaning on other people.
Sorry, I remember what I wanted to say really quick. And what I mean by that is, so now it's not like somebody's branching out. You don't have to feel like you're asking everybody for favors and you're a burden, because they're helping you to establish and to grow. And later you're going to be that tree like the one behind me, but you have to start like a sapling.
Mm-hmm.
And then you be this tree, and now you can look at all the life around you. You could sustain all the animals before, but before they had to help you, they had to crap so you could get fertilization.
Yes.
You know what I mean? They had to, like, the other trees had to do whatever it had to do. And that now it's this big, strong tree that you see behind. Well, you might not be able to see behind me now, but you know what I'm talking about. So that's what I mean. So it's okay to ask for help and to get help and to get assistance.
And if you look at the card, honestly, you could almost say it looks like a ladder, right?
Wow, I didn't even think of that. You just blew my mind, Ashley.
Yeah, each of those wands can act as like a rung to help get you up higher into the clouds, right? Kind of that help you get to the top of the mountain, help you rise up to be successful. I was saying this to my little sister the other day. I said, lean on your network.
Yeah.
People, I know that there is such a stigma with asking for help. I feel like that's very old fashioned, but there's nothing wrong with that. If you don't put it out there, no one can help you. And I know there's like, well, I can do this myself. Why? Why would you take, if I can choose between getting to where I want to go in an easier route because other people are helping me, you know what's going to happen? If I get there, I'm going to turn around and I'm going to help other people. But I think that when there's like, well, there's two mindsets there, right? If you're like, well, I don't need anyone's help, I'm going to do it myself. And then if people ask you, you're going to be like, oh, well, I did it by myself, so I'm not going to do that. And I feel like, what is that? That doesn't help anybody. Let's elevate everyone. You know, there's room for everybody at the top. And I look at, if I was saying in a career focused reading, I would say, kind of going off of what you said, it would be like, you know, making progress, going somewhere, some kind of movement where you're going to have the opportunity to shine. Rarely do you do that by yourself. Even if you want to think about the best athletes in the world, right? In a solitary kind, look at Michael Phelps, right? Swimming is a very solitary sport. And he didn't do that by himself though. He had a coach. His mom drove him to fucking practice. He had a wife that took care of his family while he was out practicing.
And took care of him too.
Right. And then he had people that would swim against him at practice. So it wasn't just him by himself. There, you know, no person is an island. So I would say that when I'm looking at this, but I'd also say this is an opportunity for you to shine. And sometimes it's okay to take that spotlight and say, yeah, I did do this with the help of everyone else, but don't negate your own opportunities to stand out in the spotlight. Some people don't like that, but you know what? It's okay to be like, I did this and I want to take that kind of glory for a second. And I also want to say, I always like talking about what kind of careers this would kind of focus on. So if I got this card, I would say probably like tourism, some kind of maybe like a travel agent or something like this. Something that signifies movement, but hopefully, you know, not downward movement, obviously. So,
well, downward movement's okay though. You know, you got to go down to go up. So,
well, and a plane has to land at some point, but hopefully it's a smooth landing, you know, and not a crash.
Hopefully it doesn't crash in the mountains and you have to eat your fellow survivors.
Yeah, or it lands on the Hudson. And
I wonder if that really happened, or if that was just like, if those people got together to make up a story about a plane crash. Like, anyway.
So, okay. All right. So now I feel like we've looked at this. Let's talk just 1 second. What we didn't do last week, which I was so pissed about when I was listening to the podcast, is that we didn't talk about if it comes up in a reverse.
Oh, yeah. But really quickly before we do that, I just want to say I was referencing the movie Alive, which was a book about a soccer team that crashed and then they had to eat some people that were dead, whatever, surviving cannibalism. That's what I was referencing to, if in case anyone's like, what? And what I wanted to say about what you said was that I feel in this society, especially, we come from a place of lack. We're lacking for some reason. Like there's not enough resources in our environment, or I feel that's not true. And that's evidenced by, you know, all this food that gets wasted. I think they say like 1/3 or 1/2 of food or whatever just gets wasted. So I feel there's plenty of things in our environment. If we could just realize that and be thankful for what we do have. And that's kind of like climbing the ladder, because then, like I've said in the past, you're kind of looking down at where you came from to look up to see where you are. And then you're proceeding instead of not looking down at all because you're afraid. You want to at least peek down there to see where you came, you know, and that's what this card kind of represents too, because if you're climbing that ladder and you're so close to the ladder, sometimes you can't see. If you're on the side of the mountain and it's a sheer cliff, you can't really see, you know, where you are specifically. So.
Do you know, I'm looking at the card and right side up, I told you I felt like it seemed directionally awkward to me. Because I felt like they're coming from the left, diagonally going right. It's the same direction when you flip it upside down. But it almost seems more negative. Like there's like it seems like you're losing that growth and that prosperity and that fertility and that abundance of the ground. It's like you're moving away from that. And then And I can attest to what happens then when you kind of lose that passion and you don't see anything happening. It really zaps your energy and your motivation and your focus, because you feel like, well, what's the point of spending time doing any of these things? It's not going to work anyway. Which I feel like a lot of people succumb to because they want to have like instant success. And so then maybe you're spending your time focusing on things outside of what you should be focusing on. You don't have that intense concentration on helping yourself do XYZ. You're instead being like, well, I'm going to just put my little bit of time here, all those like time fillers, those time zappers. And then what happens is you might spend a little bit of time on what you're going to be doing, but then it's going to take that much longer to get to that success point. I could say, well, I want to become a marathon runner, but I'm going to start off just doing 100 steps a day, which if I started with nothing, sure. But hopefully most of us walk more than that. And then it's like, well, and in 3 weeks, I'm going to go up to 150 steps. It's going to take you a long time to get to that marathon point.
Good point. But if that's all you can do, then do it. But I see what you're saying, though. It's all about a balance, really,
All right.
Go for it. Go ahead.
So now we're going to do what we normally do here is we look at the same card, but in a different deck. So it's a different interpretation. It's a different image. We normally just kind of look at the card and then talk about initial thoughts. And for this part, Brandon is the one that describes it.
All right. So we're looking at the Aleister Crowley Thoth deck once again. And this is the Eight of Wands. And again, I'll give my little brief little talk about Aleister Crowley and the Thoth deck and what we kind of way we interpret these symbols and these cards. I look at it as it's a creation of art that was pulled from the ether somehow, somebody's subconscious. So whatever intent that they had, despite that intent, it could mean something totally different to somebody else. It can mean something positive. It can help somebody else, just like a tool, so that's kind of why we look at all these things. We don't necessarily look at the people who, created them and say that they're the best, but we, I don't know. I haven't read everything he said. So anyway, not to get lost in the weeds too much, but this is a really beautiful card. Looking at the Eight of Wands, the Aleister Crowley Thoth deck, if you guys want to look at it. And like I said on a video, I have it pulled up here. There's a rainbow on top of it, on the top of the card. In the middle, there are these wands. Well, I guess that's what they're calling the wands, but they look like red bolts of energy or lightning coming out. And they're making two crosses. So you have the normal cross, like you think of the Christian cross, and then the X cross of the cardinal directions. And so under that you have, it looks like a kind of like a cube or a diamond, geometrical diamond, and then interlaced in there's another one that looks like it could be looking down at a pyramid from the top, which is making a Squarespace. Squarespace. This is not a commercial. And then at the bottom it says swiftness.
All right, everybody calm down here. I love this card.
I know.
This is a card that actually I felt I understood as soon as I looked at it. That if you listen to the episodes, I rarely feel like that when we look at the cards in this deck. But I felt so much power, so much motivation, inspiration, just kind of, I'm looking at this and it reminded me, okay, hold on, I'm going to back up. So there's this rainbow, and you see these rainbow colors throughout the card. Now, if we're going off traditional rainbow colors, there's 7, right? So you might be saying, what the fuck? This is the 8. Maybe you're not saying that. Maybe you're like, I don't even know where you're going with this. But listen, I have a point. Those 8 colors, though, make up white light, right? Every color of the rainbow is going to be coming out of white light. It's kind of like when you shine light through a prism, like a white light through a prism, and then you see the rainbow come out of it. I felt, and in the past cards we've seen actual wands. There's no wands here, but it seems so powerful because it's like these like lightning bolts. These like, and they're coming from like the center of these two pyramids or these two, you know, if you want to say cubes, and emanating outwards with arrows. It's kind of like I have this main focal point. I've been hit by this lightning bolt of inspiration, and now I'm just going to explode outward.
Nice. Very synchronistic.
And do you know, can I just say, like, I often, whenever we look at it, I'm like, what are we even looking at here? I actually felt I understood this.
Oh, I'm very excited for you then. That's yeah, it's a great card. I mean, I'm looking at it and I was thinking to myself, like, that'd be a great card to get as a tattoo.
Yep.
And then I thought to myself about this funny meme I just saw, and it was a meme of Jesus, you know, like the representation we have Jesus, and he had a gun in his hand and he was like knocking on this door with a gun, and he's like, better not be anybody with tattoos in there. Send him out or something like that. Yeah. Oh my God, I was dying. Memes are the best. Oh, go ahead.
I just honestly, like, I was so excited especially when you just pulled it up, because it was like I had looked at it before and I was like, okay, I know what I'm going to say. But then even just seeing it again, it feels very motivational for me. As I'm wearing today, something with like a little bit of a rainbow on it.
Yeah, I noticed that, and I was thinking about that too. But I'm glad you pointed that out. I was like, I wonder if she did that on purpose. Yeah, I think this card means so much because it's really like the expression of the energy and of the wands. Because if you see that rainbow, like you said, light goes through a prism and then it expresses the rainbow. Light goes through rain and it expresses the rainbow. So that's why it's at the top. It's the chief focal point of this. So you can focus on different points of it if you want, of the card, obviously, whatever you're drawn to. But I would say, since the rainbow's centered at the top, it's letting you know that that expression is important. And then think about what the 8 represents. It's the infinity symbol. So if this is somebody who calls himself a quote unquote magician, and they are creating in the world, you know, like I'm creating books and podcasts and laughs for people, and I want to do this and sustain it, I have to get everything equaled in those parts. And the expression is a very vital, important part of that, because if you don't express it, it's going to stay within and it could destroy you if it stays within. So,
and do you know what I love is, so at the bottom, the card says swiftness. Everyone's gonna be like, who the fuck is this? This is not the person that every week is like, oh, I don't know what we're doing. But I'm looking at where all of these like lightning bolts kind of connect right in the center. And I could see that just being like that zap of creativity, that zap of inspiration, right? That light bulb moment where it's like, as soon as you have that, it's just like, boom, all of a sudden, you know exactly what you need to do.
Yeah. And it's coming from the center of the 2 overlaid objects, which look, you know, like they look like some kind of 3D objects. So I love that too, because it's like a mystery of the creation, because there's so many things you could say about that. We could spend a whole podcast talking about how 3 going into 4 and representing how you square the circle and what that means. But really what it means is just gaining understanding. And when you gain understanding, it becomes wisdom when you express it. So you take facts, you take information, and you're looking at them, and they can mean something to you literally. But then if you go through an experience, something means more to you. You're like, oh, this is what it means now. So then you embody what that really means to you. And then to share that experience with other people, like I did in my book. Great example, boot camp, right? I knew what boot camp was. I went through it. I experienced it literally. I knew exactly what was going on. All right. So that was the first level. And I was able to express it and tell people my experience. Then later, I came across information about psychology and about how to train people and talk about things and this stuff. And then I viewed my experience in a whole different light. And now I could keep that inside, or I can express it again. And expressing it is that rainbow. And that's what I'm doing.
And do you know what else, going back to the card, what you also did is, there are multiple ways people learn. Not everyone learns the same way. And to reach the most people, you need to be able to explain things several different ways. And I love that. I know that's what you did in your book. And that to me is what all of those rays are symbolizing, right? Because it's not like it hits in one point and then all of a sudden it's just going off in one direction. Because how many people are, and in a sense of getting struck by lightning, maybe you do want it to go off in one direction. But if you have it going off in all these directions, you don't know who it's going to hit and then inspire, and then they have 8 different rays going off of them, right? And that's how you can think about kind of starting a movement of inspiring a mass amount of people.
Yeah, I like that. And I think we could end it right there unless you had anything else you wanted to say. Because
no, I'm good, but I really like this card. So definitely take a look at it on our Instagram or on our Facebook. It's beautiful and hopefully inspirational for you. Very inspirational for me.
Yeah, exactly. All right.
So next week we'll be talking about the 9 of Wands, just like kind of we did this week. But if you're looking for a little extra dose of the 2 of us, we also now have our Thursday episodes going out, which is us interviewing some different guests. And look, I'm open to, if you listen to the podcast, I'd love to have you come on just to talk about your experience. Chances are, if you're listening to the podcast, you're interested in tarot. You don't need to be a tarot reader. You don't need to be a professional tarot reader or anything like that. Just kind of more of a conversation about spirituality, how it affects your life, how you got started into being interested in that. So definitely reach out to us either via Instagram or on our Facebook. And I'd love to get more reviews. So if you could be so kind as to leave us a review on iTunes, that would be awesome.
Yeah, and that would be awesome. Or on Spotify or anywhere where you hear this, and they let you leave reviews. So if you have like an Android or whatever you call them, a Galaxy, like I do, all the podcast apps, you could find our podcast there. Just put in Terrible. Or like I said, if you just go to terrible.com and you click on it on your phone, the proper one will pop up, or it'll like give you a link to it normally. Or if not, just email me and I'll walk you right through it. But what I wanted to tell you also was, if you're somebody who wanted to speak with us, but you don't want to be recorded and share yourself with the world, you can also get a reading from one of us, and you could do that at our Facebook page.
Yes.
Or just
that would be super awesome.
Yeah, we do readings to everybody.
So we'll be doing that, and I feel like we're good, and we'll be back next week talking about the 9s. Which is like my favorite number in all of the numbers. It's like my favorite number, and we'll talk about that next week. But
all right, everybody. Well, we'll talk about that next week. Thank you for tuning in one more time to the Terrible Podcast, and we hope that you tune again next week. And until then, stay terrible.